Hey everyone, we're going to start in about 1 minute. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon everyone. I want to welcome you to today's webinar, which centers on coaching OCAT clients on strengthening executive function skills. My name is Janetta Deppa, and I am an OCAT team member. I will be moderating this presentation today. I'm also joined by our two speakers, Deborah Joffe and Cindy Perry. Executive functions include the mental processes which help manage people's abilities to make decisions, stay organized, multitask, regulate self-control, establish and stick to routines, and fulfill many other daily life requirements. While executive functioning skills are typically developed in childhood and are critical for learning and development, children with adverse childhood experiences, known as ACEs, including those who experience trauma, who are abused or neglected, or who grow up in poverty, often have undeveloped or underdeveloped functioning skills. These issues persist into adulthood, complicating a person's ability to establish routines, forge supportive relationships, manage crises, and handle decision-making and problem-solving. Clearly, a person's level of executive functioning directly impacts their ability to be self-sufficient. So, a couple of words about logistics before we get started. Our speakers will present for about 45 minutes, and after that, we will turn the floor over for a Q&A session. If you would like to ask a question, please type this into the question panel on the lower right-hand side of your screen. If you think of a question during the presentation, please go ahead and just type this in whenever you think of it. And then again, we will address all of these questions at the end. So, before we begin today, I'd like to take a minute or so and have everyone listening fill out a quick poll. So you will find the questions for this poll again in that box on the right-hand side of your screen. Click the word poll. This is in a dark gray box, and it'll drop down and show 3 questions we'd like for you to answer so we can get an idea of the audience who is listening today. So I will go ahead and start that poll, that first poll now. So what best describes your position for those who are listening in the audience today? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that and share. So it seems that the vast majority of those listening today are case managers. We also have about 5% supervisors, 3% administrators, and 9% other attendees today. Okay. For our next poll, we were curious in learning about your level of knowledge about the 2 main concepts we will be covering today. So the first is, how familiar are you with the concept of executive function? All right, so let's see. Seems about half are a little familiar with the concept, a little under 30% are not at all familiar, and again, a little pretty much close to 30% are very familiar. So good distribution for everyone in the audience today. And our last poll to begin with is, how familiar are you with the concept of coaching? And I will watch that one right now. Okay, let's see, we're going to close this one. Okay, so about 70% are very familiar, 25% are a little familiar, and 7% are not at all familiar. So it seems like general basis of those who are very familiar is much higher for coaching, but and again, those who are not at all familiar is much less for coaching than for executive functions. So thank you. Let me close this poll. Oop. All right, so before we begin presentations, I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to our speakers and talk for a moment about why they are here today. So Deborah Joffe is an associate manager at PCG. She manages PCG's executive function related work, including training based on PCG's Human Services Coaching Framework and other program design decisions. Additionally, Ms. Joffe currently oversees PCG's CalWorks Welfare to Work project in San Diego, California. Ms. Joffe has significant experience providing policy analysis, business diagnosis, program design, expenditure analysis, and implementation assistance for TANF programs. Cindy Perry is the Workforce Development Program Supervisor for Lane County. She is a member of the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals and oversees the WIOA Adult and Dislocated Worker and Jobs programs in Lane County, Oregon. I also wanted to briefly touch upon today's learning objectives. So this webinar will provide participants with an understanding of executive function, including how executive functioning skills impact OCAT clients' abilities to make decisions and manage stress in their lives. It will also provide practical advice for participants to be able to apply concepts of executive functioning to OCAT administration. Speakers will explain about the importance of coaching, how it impacts executive functioning. Speakers will also share their experiences implementing a coaching framework and training staff on these concepts. So with that, I will turn the presentation over to our first speaker, Deborah Joffe.
Hi, this is Deb Joffe. Can everyone hear me? Great. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to talk to you about executive function and how it relates to the OCAT administration. I'm going to start off by just making sure that we all are talking from the same definition of executive function and how it may relate to the OCAT. We'll talk a little bit about how you as case managers, the majority of you are case managers, how you can support your clients in the OCAT, during the OCAT assessment. And we'll talk specifically about a couple of questions from the OCAT and to give some real life examples. So what is executive function? Next slide. Executive function, I like to think of it as the air traffic controller of the brain. Biologically, it's the frontal lobe of the brain, and it is responsible for organizing all of your other brain functions. In this way, it acts as the executive of your overall brain function. Executive function impacts people's ability to succeed in work, in education, and in personal relationships. And I think we can all agree that those are three things that are really important for CalWorks clients that you're working with during the OCAT assessment. So as was discussed earlier, executive function is often talked about in young children, because as you can see from this graph from the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard University, our brains develop very rapidly between the ages of 0 and 5. But more recent brain research shows that our brains continue to grow and develop, especially related to executive function, well into adulthood. And that gives us a great lens to look at our CalWORK clients through, because they are some of our clients are still in this growth period for their brains. When we talk about executive function, that is the technical term for a set of skills and abilities that some people refer to as adult capabilities or as executive skills. This list just describes the key executive skills that we're talking about, and as a group, we collectively call them executive function. So as you look at this list, you'll see things like time management, sustained attention, the ability to plan and prioritize, and be goal-oriented. And stop for a minute and look at this list and think about yourself. I'm sure that among those of us on this webinar, you can each identify one or two things where you have high degrees of ability, and you know you're really good at staying cool in stressful situations. So maybe you have really good emotional control. But maybe your sustained attention is less strong. And that's because all humans, all adults, have strengths and weaknesses in each of these areas. And I think it's really important to stop and look at this list and think not just about how you work on your best day, but what happens in times of stress. If you've had a really bad day, maybe your emotional control decreases. And if you have a stressful day at work, you get home and you get frustrated at your husband or your kids or your, the people you live with. So we all know that in times of stress, these skills and our abilities in each of these areas fluctuate. And that is really important for us to remember. Yep, go ahead. Because executive function is impacted by toxic stress and by prolonged stress during childhood, but also into adulthood. Healthy brain development, it can be altered in those formative years. And particularly, we have to be concerned about adverse childhood experiences, historical stress, or toxic stress. And living in poverty can be considered a form of toxic stress. So we need to remember that when a CalWORK client is sitting across from us and we're administering the OCAT, a lot of our clients, not all, may have experienced some forms of toxic stress or trauma in their childhood, or they may be experiencing that in their current life. And that may impact their ability and their abilities in each of those executive skills and executive function areas. And I want to just pause for a minute and be careful and say, I'm not talking about diagnosing someone with poor brain development. I'm saying that because people may have experienced toxic stress or may currently be in a stressful situation, their abilities in each of those skill areas we just looked at may be diminished in that point in time. But what we know about research is that we can help build, those are skills that can be learned into adulthood. So this is a quote that I think just helps set the stage for what we're talking about. So I'm just going to read it to you. Living in poverty means living in chronic scarcity, and scarcity comes with a set of cognitive consequences that may be beneficial or adaptive in the short term, but highly deleterious when experienced chronically. And what that means is people are making the right decision for them in the moment, but may not be able to look forward into how their decisions today might impact their future. And as CalWORK case managers, our goal is to help our clients set goals for themselves to help improve their future. So we need to understand the impacts that living in poverty are having on them right now, and how that may affect their decision making. So stress, in real terms, what does that mean? Stress and scarcity can lead to what can be called tunneling. And tunneling really means that you're focused on whatever is most urgent and whatever unmet need is most pressing. And that is really all your brain has the capacity to focus on at that moment in time. And so if you don't know where you're sleeping that night for you and your child, thinking about what kind of a job you want is not the most pressing thing right now, and you may not be able to focus on making good decisions in that area because you're experiencing tunneling. Similarly, there's something that we call bandwidth tasks. And what bandwidth tasks is, I think of it like your computer. If you have too many programs open on your computer, they all start to run more slowly and you can't get them to respond. And then eventually you get that terrible not responding parenthetical at the top of the program. The same thing happens to us as humans. And I'm talking about me, I'm talking about you, and I'm talking about our CalWorks clients. When we have too many things causing us stress or trying to draw our attention, it can result in us being less insightful, less forward thinking, and less controlled. And those are those kind of bad days that we might all have that we can relate to. Some signs that the person sitting in front of you, your CalWorks client, might be, their executive function might be being impacted by stress, might be that they're easily frustrated. Oh, sorry, I skipped a slide. So let's think about how we think our morning should look. Let's say you're a single working mom, you have 2 kids, you need to get them ready and off to school. In an ideal morning, everyone woke up on time, everyone slept great, kids are up, kids are happy, they're eating breakfast, their lunches are packed, and you're ready to go and meet the bus on time, and you'll be on time, maybe even early to work. But in reality, life happens and stress happens. Maybe the kids didn't sleep. Maybe you didn't sleep. You were up worrying about how you were going to pay your next bill. People wake up late, they're stressed, and the morning gets off to a rocky start. This is just a simulation of how stress can impact your executive function, because in the picture on the left, the mom can be thoughtful and thinking about what she's going to do at work that day, what she's going to accomplish. But on the right, she just needs to figure out how to get kids out the door and to school and hopefully not be late and worry about whether or not she's going to get in trouble at work. Those stressful situations can lead to lower executive function throughout the day. So some signs that stress might be impacting your client's executive function, and again, not diagnosing people here with, I'm purposely using the word impacted executive function and not lower executive function, because I'm not saying that lower executive skills means there's a problem with your brain. What I'm saying is that sometimes stress can impact the way that your brain operates and your ability to leverage those skills that you may have. So signs that stress may be impacting executive function, either in ourselves or in our clients, they might become easily frustrated. They might have a short fuse or get easily distracted. So during that OCAT, you're talking to them about one thing and they change the subject. You might notice that your clients have a lack of time management. Maybe they've been fired from several jobs because of the stress in their life, and their executive skills may not help them keep those jobs. A lot of clients may start educational programs without finishing them. So these are just some signs that executive function may be impacted due to stress. And we as case managers in the CalWorks program need to understand how to react to that. So let's look back at that list of executive skills that are related to executive function. And let's think about what skills are required to successfully complete the OCAT. Sustained attention. The OCAT is long. There are a lot of questions. Really good information can come out of the OCAT, but the client has to be able to focus and really be able to answer questions and keep that sustained attention. They need to be able to exhibit response inhibition, which means really think about their answers and not just get upset. Response inhibition is the skill that keeps you from talking back to your boss at work or saying anything that's on your mind. So I sometimes think of it as your filter, your internal filter. And goal-directed response. We want clients, when we're thinking about the OCAT, to be thinking about what could they be doing? What kinds of jobs are they interested in? And we're asking them to be forward-thinking. But often the OCAT administered right at the beginning of public assistance may be coming at a time of stress for the clients, and they may be in that tunneling period that we just talked about, and they may not be able to look beyond their situation today and toward what goals they should be focusing on. So you can tell that executive function really does relate, and people's abilities and skills in these areas will really relate to their ability to successfully complete the OCAT. So how can we help? What are some tips and tricks for you as case managers to work with your clients who may be in those moments of stress, and how can you encourage executive skills development with and then during your time together? So a couple of things can help improve executive function. We can either help reduce the cognitive load, which is really trying to reduce that bandwidth task that's on our client at the time, and we can help increase their skills and capacity. Let's look at each of those individually. We can reduce the cognitive strain during our conversation in a couple of key ways. The most important is probably to set expectations up front and to explain what the OCAT is and how long it might take and the kinds of questions you're going to be asking them. Because if you can set expectations up front and the OCAT client knows what to expect, they'll be more willing to go with the flow and continue through the process with you and to be able to exhibit that sustained attention. You should use plain language. We should be talking to clients not using jargon or terms that are specific to the CalWORKs program, but instead using language that's easy for them to understand so that they don't have to worry about what you're really trying to say. We can make questions short but impactful so that we're not putting too much bandwidth tax on them at any given point in time. We should, and this is one that's hard because again, the OCAT is a great tool, but does have a lot of questions and a lot of things you need to get through. Try not to offer more information than is needed. So this goes back to making questions short. If you ask compound questions, it'll be harder for the clients to respond in a positive and goal-directed manner. Use concrete examples if you can of the types of information you're looking for and give them examples when needed. And also pause, take breaks, make sure to check in with the clients during the OCAT administration, make sure they're kind of still with you and ask if they need a minute to just breathe. Because you are asking a lot of really intense personal questions at times, and that can be a drain and hard to continue. Again, that sustained attention is a really key executive function skill. In addition to help trying to reduce the cognitive load that we're asking the clients to use during the OCAT, we can try and increase their skills through coaching techniques. And a lot of you said, almost 3/4 of you said that you're familiar with coaching, which is great. And I just want to level set on what I'm talking about when I talk about coaching. Coaching is a person-centered, strengths-based way of working with others that helps direct the changes they want to make in their own lives. And the key is that coaching is really about what the client wants and not what the agency needs from them. So coaching is active listening. It's asking powerful questions rather than making authoritative statements. And it's making sure that your work with them is individualized and self-directed. PCG has developed a human services coaching framework that we use to train TANF agencies and other workforce agencies around the country in using coaching techniques as part of case management. And we define coaching as being person-centered, relationship-based, and goal-driven. And as part of the relationship-based module, we really focus on a couple of tricks and tips and techniques that can help during the OCAT administration. So we focus on active listening and on powerful questions. And active listening includes things like using reflective statements and summary statements to make sure that the client understands that you've heard what they've said. Active listening is observing and responding to cues, both verbal and nonverbal, to make sure the case manager is in tune with the client sitting across from them. And it's removing all distractions. Now, one thing that comes up a lot when talking to TANF case managers about removing distractions is that when you're doing the OCAT, you're sitting in front of your computer and you're often entering information at the same time as you're talking. So when I say removing all distractions, I don't necessarily mean not doing the data entry that you need to do, but I mean turning your phone off, not answering your phone for other clients, putting your cell phone away, trying to provide space and time between your different meetings so you have the ability to have those good, meaningful conversations with each client during the OCAT. And also you can set the expectations by explaining to the clients that during this conversation, you're going to be entering information into the computer so that you can get them the benefits and services they need more quickly. And by setting those expectations, you're making it clear that even though you're doing the data entry, you're still really focused on them and their needs. As part of building that relationship, we also encourage the use of powerful questions. Powerful questions build ownership in the client and spur growth and progress for the clients themselves. We want our CalWORK clients, the OCAT clients, to be using the OCAT assessment for a little bit of self-discovery to figure out what it is that they want to do also, rather than us as case managers telling them what they might want to do. Hopefully, if we can use powerful questions, they can make some of that self-discovery on their own. And what exactly is a powerful question? We've all heard of powerful questions. Powerful questions are open-ended questions that spark reflection, solution ownership, and growth. So, as powerful questions are not yes and no, cannot be answered with one-word responses or yes, no, and they should, when asked at the right moment in time, they cause the client to really think about their response and maybe learn something about themselves at the same time. By asking powerful questions and building those skills in clients to do the self-reflection, we're equipping them with the tools to do that even after our relationship with them during CalWORK ends. Powerful questions are helpful because they can be used to encourage clients to set goals that they want to keep, to help them solve their own problems and find their own solutions rather than always relying on other people to give them the answers. And they can develop those executive skills we talked about through self-reflection, self-discovery, and ownership of the problems. Okay, that was a lot of words. Let's talk about how this actually applies to the OCAT. So we took 3 screenshots from 3 different questions during the OCAT to use as examples, and I'll walk you through each of those now. So the first one we're looking at is in the employment section, A2, question A2, which is, why are you not currently working? And on this screen, you can see that there are, and you know, because you administer the OCAT, there are a lot of reasons why someone might not be working. What we want to avoid is, what we want to do is we want to ask this question to spark a conversation. We want to avoid a laundry list and asking things like, were there any issues related to compensation? Were there any issues related to health? If you ask each question as a laundry list, you could overload the client and overwhelm them with the possible reasons why they're not currently working. Instead, the question, why are you not currently working, in and of itself can really be powerful. It gives the client the ability to stop and think, why am I not working? What are the biggest barriers between me and the ability to get a job? So I would encourage you to think about how you could use powerful questions here. A couple of examples of powerful questions to spur this conversation. What caused you to lose your last job? What is keeping you from working? And my favorite, what can you tell me more about that? Someone could answer the question, why are you not working, with a one-word answer of my physical health, right? And you could just check the box and move on. But if you ask the question, can you tell me more about that? You may learn not just what they can't do, but what they could do. I couldn't do my last job because I had to lift a lot of things, and I'm not able to stand up and sit down all day long. I would really need a job where I am able to sit most of the day. That can help direct later conversations about what kind of job might be more appropriate. So powerful questions can help get at broader answers that can really help direct the conversation in the future. Let's look at another section about the work experience of the individual. And this is again from section A, question A4. There are a lot of reasons, a lot of different jobs people can have. It's always amazing how many different jobs there are in the world. And going through this list, again as a laundry list, could potentially be overwhelming to the client. So you might want to start with asking just a general question about the kind of work they've done in the past, focusing in on that, and then asking about what kinds of work they might be interested in. On the next slide, so some strategies for managing this question, and a lot of the questions in the OCAT are really what I think of as kind of list questions. There are a lot of things you need to ask and a lot of radio buttons you need to be able to complete. So you want to explain the goal of this series of questions, and that this is really about identifying the client's skills and interests, and also to give them new ideas of job opportunities. There might be jobs listed on this screen that the client would be interested in, but they've never even thought of because it's not part of their kind of general frame of reference. So sparking interest and sparking new ideas can be a positive result from this question. I would also encourage you to think about how to break it up and take it in pieces or group questions where appropriate. For example, things like farming, fishing and hunting, and harvesting local resources are all very similar, but appear spread out on the list and might feel repetitive if they're asked individually. Same with dental work and healthcare. You could ask that question together, and then in the back end, just answer the two questions separately yourself. Because trying not to be repetitive will help the client maintain that sustained attention through this lengthy OCAT assessment that we're asking them to participate in, which is so critical to their future in Cal work. The last example that I want to dive into is the question in section K about relationships. And there's first, you're asking some of the kind of demographic questions. Are you single or married? And then there's this question that can really spark a lot of important, good conversation related and be related to executive function development. Do you have people you can rely on in times of need? Do you have a support system? This could be a yes/no question. In fact, it is in the OCAT. And maybe during the OCAT assessment, the question is just a yes/no, and maybe you ask a quick follow-up of who. But as a case manager, part of our job is to help, in my opinion, is to help clients think about contingency plans and what can they do if something goes wrong, so that if in times of stress they encounter a crisis, they know how they're going to handle it. So this question, whether someone has people they can rely on in times of need, is really good information for you as a case manager to use as a launching point to talk about contingency planning, which is the ability to develop a contingency plan and then actually follow through on it during a time of crisis. Shows a high level of executive function. But in order to be able to be planful in that moment of crisis, we all need to have thought about our contingency plan in advance. So on the next slide, we talked about how crisis and stress can impact our executive skills. So things might be going okay, but then your kid gets sick. And if you don't have a backup childcare and you're not able to go to work, that can cause a significant amount of stress for a CalWORKs client. It could result, if this happens too many times, it could certainly result in loss of jobs. Same with if you've got to work, but your child maybe starts to misbehave, or your furnace breaks down in the middle of winter, or your car breaks down and you're not able to get to work on time. All of these individual situations are solvable, but in the moment, if you are stressed and you encounter a moment of crisis, you may not think clearly. And this applies to all of us too. But if we have developed a contingency plan in advance, that can help, then it helps us successfully navigate through the crisis. So related back to that OCAT question, if someone says yes, they have a support system, then a follow-up conversation might be to have the client actually name who those people are and what they could help with and when. And having a client write down the names of the people who could help them in different situations will help them remember who those people are in the time of crisis. And this is a way that as a case manager, you can actually help the client build those executive skills so that they don't have to rely on, so they have them in their working memory and know how to react if certain crises arise. So there are a couple of other tricks, and this is separate from the OCAT, but one last one I want to just leave you with is that there are ways to increase your executive skills and capacities in kind of what might be considered very natural ways. If you think about going to the grocery store, there's the old adage, never go to the grocery store hungry, right? Because you might give in to that impulse control and not be able to avoid taking that Ben & Jerry's ice cream out of the freezer. But for clients who are financially, or who have limited financial resources and limited time, the ability to do something as what might sound as simple as building a grocery list can actually help increase the executive skills and capacities in a really meaningful way. So by sitting down before you go to the grocery store and developing a grocery list, potentially with a budget, can help with executive skills like task initiation. Maybe you hate going to the grocery store, but you really need to go. It can help build organization and planning and prioritization so that you can really focus on what do you need the most? What are the key staples that you need in your refrigerator so you can feed your family? And then what might be the nice to have, the Ben & Jerry's ice cream of the world. It can help with self-monitoring and impulse control, because if you don't allow yourself to buy things that are not on the list, you're developing willpower, which is a key executive skill that can help be successful. So while a grocery list may be a simplistic example, it's a good way to think about the kinds of skills that people need to be able to develop in order to be successful at work. Because a very similar analogy could be made if you're given a task to do. Making a to-do list of the order of how you're going to accomplish that task at work can help you be more successful. So those are a few ways that we can try and increase our clients' executive skills, even through the OCAT. Just asking powerful questions and getting our clients to reflect on themselves and their own interests is a way to help build their understanding and their metacognition and self-awareness. So with that, I will turn it over to Cindy.
Thank you, Deb. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm Cindy Perry with Lane County Health and Human Services in Oregon. And my presentation is going to focus more on what we did in terms of learning to coach and teach executive function skills at the local level. So you could give it the next slide, please. Can you hear me? Oh, there you go. Thank you. So I just really want to set the stage for, who Lane County, Oregon is, what we look like demographically, so that I can kind of give you guys an idea of what we were facing, the challenges we were facing here in Lane County. We are a college town. We're home to the University of Oregon, and we're very proud of that. And, the good news is that we have a very low unemployment rate in Lane County at 4.4%, but we have a really high poverty rate at 18.8%. So we have just over 70,500 people living in poverty in Lane County. So with a population of 375,000, that's a significant issue for us. We also have a huge issue with people who are homeless and unstably housed. And a lot of the people that we have in our area are chronically unemployed. We have a huge issue with people being able to find affordable housing. And it's to the point where people who qualify for Section 8 vouchers are often actually unable to even use their voucher because they can't find a housing unit that will accept them. So their voucher expires, resulting in a waste of what are very limited resources for us. So it's a significant problem for us here. Next slide, please. So our customers that we serve, so I manage actually the WIOA Adult Dislocated Worker Program, the JOBS program, which is CalWorks. In Oregon, we call it the JOBS program under TANF. And we also have a SNAP 50/50 program that we manage, an employment and training program. And in all of our programs, a majority of the customers that we serve are actually literally homeless or unstably housed. Many of our customers have an eviction notice, which makes it really difficult for us to even move them into housing. Many of our customers come to us at a point in time when they are in crisis. In Lane County, we do benefit from a rich mix of service providers who have a history of working in collaboration with each other. And as in other towns up and down the West Coast, we have a significant problem with homelessness. So, all the way from Seattle down to San Diego, we know that the West Coast is facing, this huge problem. A lot of our customers that come into us are actually in doubled up households, and that adds another level of stress for the family. And the families are coming to us, as Deb mentioned, a lot of times people, who don't have strong executive function skills are in crisis a lot of times. And our families are coming to us just focused on today's need. Like, I need a gas, voucher or a bus pass because I have to get to this doctor appointment, those kinds of things. And they're really not able to deal with thinking about future needs when they are in crisis. So what we needed to do for all of our programs is figure out how we were going to address this. So our approach, if you could go to the next slide, please. Our approach was to actually work on improving our services to our customers, and it was a twofold approach. We started with making sure that the staff are trained in what executive function is, and then we also put staff through trauma-informed care training. All of our staff. We just did a second session of trauma-informed care training with Robin Rose just yesterday. So this is like a really huge thing for us to look at everything we do from the moment somebody walks into our building all the way through somebody gaining employment, through that lens of trauma-informed care. And this allowed us to heighten our awareness of what our customers may be experiencing when they come into us for services. So then in addition to one-on-one services that our customers get, we wanted to provide a mechanism to teach our customers how to use and develop their executive function skills, similar to what Deb was talking about with the grocery list, and how do you use those kinds of things to teach people to strengthen their own executive function skills. And in one of the most trauma-informed ways that we figured out how to do this was through teaching in our workshops. So we can do it in one-on-one, but we could really make a significant impact for our customers in workshops. So we developed a team of subject matter experts that are good at developing workshop content, and we really focus in on training those team members on executive function skills and how we would develop workshops through that lens. We spent about a year and a half, and we developed just over 20 workshops in total. And then that had to start with the staff training. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So we did some research, and coincidentally, we came across Public Consulting Group. I came across a PowerPoint presentation on the internet that had been developed by Deb Jaffe, who you were just listening to. And so we got in contact with Deb to find out how we could go about getting PCG to come to Oregon and provide that training for our staff here in Oregon. And so Deb's staff came and spent 2 full days training all of us, and we included some partner staff on what executive function skills were. They trained us on the human services coaching framework that Deb had mentioned. And so our key learning objectives were really to figure out what are these skills, what are the essential skills that affect our customers. PCG introduced and helped us learn what executive function is. We were taught the coaching framework that PCG uses. We were taught to identify personal strengths and emotional intelligence. And then we also were taught to use active listening skills, reflecting skills, and the powerful questions that Deb introduced in her presentation. And this really helped us when we were helping to guide our customers, especially around barrier removal that many of our customers face. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to spend too much time here because Deb really introduced what executive function is very, very well. But I do want to state that, we've learned that people who grow up in poverty may not have strong executive function skills. Trauma and stress can have a negative impact on executive function skills. And as Deb stated, many of us have experienced a time when our own stress levels have triggered negative responses and have caused us to make poor decisions. And sometimes we're just having a really bad day that snowballs out of control. For those of us who have strong executive function skills, we can usually manage through the bad day and gain emotional control. We can use reflective thinking and problem solving to help us learn from the experience and identify the trigger and make a decision about how we'll react if it happens next time. And I'll give you an example of what happened to me just today. I was having technical issues just getting on this webinar, and I could feel my stress level go up because I was like not able to get the webinar to launch, but because I have skills, I was able to problem solve and say, well, what if I try this? And obviously it worked. I'm on the webinar. So even for those of us, that do have strong skills, sometimes you can really feel your stress level go up. And if you don't have these skills, it can snowball out of control. And for those of us who grew up in poverty and constant trauma, we may not have the skills at all. So in working with our customers, we especially find a lack of good decision making and prioritization skills. Deb mentioned the thing about childcare. Those of us who are parents, we know that if our plan A for childcare goes bad, we really need to have a plan B. And without future planning skills, we might not have a plan B when our plan A becomes unreliable. And, then that causes more problems down the road. So I'm going to talk a little bit about developing our workshop series. In Lane County, we did name our workshops Bridges to Success workshops. A team of our staff spent almost 2 years researching and developing our Bridges to Success workshops. We're using the word bridges. It has a local meaning for us in Oregon, especially here in Lane County, as we are known for our beautiful historic covered bridges. But the word bridges or bridge also symbolizes a crossing, so we can help people cross over into a more productive environment or way of being. All of our workshops are also vetted by the team to ensure that they are void of triggers. This was especially important for topics such as our belief system, which our belief system topic is not about religious content. It's rather about why we believe the things about ourselves that we do. Where do those thoughts and feelings come from? And for triggers, I'll give you an example of one that we're very careful not to use is like when you're doing an icebreaker and you want to do an icebreaker and you say, well, let's go around the room and tell us what your favorite childhood cereal was. Well, the word childhood may trigger someone's trauma. Maybe they had a really bad childhood. Maybe they don't remember ever having cereal, store-bought cereal when they were a child because they were so poor. Those types of things. So we're super careful about that in our workshops. So everything is done through a trauma-informed care lens. The content is all interactive. It includes video clips, humor where it's appropriate, and personal stories. We have facilitation guides, and what our workshop facilitators can do is use the guide, but then put their own stories into the guide. And as I mentioned earlier, we have over 20 topics that have been developed. Each workshop is about an hour and a half in length. They're all standalone. People don't have to come. It's not a series of workshops, that one, builds upon the other. So it makes it easy for our customers to just come in and out when they're able to attend, and then to learn something. And these are good for everyone. People don't have to be in a job search plan in order to benefit, or just have to show up for job search workshops. They could be in a plan and show up for the Bridges workshop and gain some benefit from it. Even when we think people maybe are not work ready, they can still gain some value out of attending a Bridges to Success workshop. They're all life skills types of workshops. So next slide. So this is an example of some of our workshops. We have Creating Your Future, the balance wheel. So this kind of looks, at how your life is balanced between, work and play, your children, those types of things. So Organized Me, this helps people really learn some organizational skills. The Power of Belief, this is one I mentioned a few minutes ago. It's not religious, but it's why do we believe the things we believe about ourselves? We have goals, map your future. So it really teaches people about goal setting. Fear, failure, and moving on teaches people how we learn from our mistakes, and that it's okay to make mistakes. We all make mistakes, and we learn from our mistakes. And then intent versus impact. What I said and what you heard, maybe what I said wasn't what I really meant to say, so what was the intent of what I said and what was the impact of what I said. My support system, Deb mentioned this earlier. I'm going to spend some time on this particular workshop. So I don't want to like go into too much about what Deb said, but really the support system is important. I lived in San Diego County for 33 years. I moved back to Oregon 5 years ago. And as we were putting this workshop together, I realized I had left my entire support system in San Diego County, and I had not built a support system here in Lane County. So even people, who are professionals who I've been in workforce development since the early 90s, can learn from these types of things. What we did in this, the support systems are useful for several different purposes. It helps to reestablish competence in times of high stress, as Deb had mentioned. If you have a plan already, then you have, something that you can put into place. It helps us with maintaining our high performance when all is going well and achieving specific objectives. There is a video, a guy named Jerome Braggs. He has a series of videos out there. One we use in this workshop that he has on YouTube is called Create a Support System. It's a great video. I would highly recommend anyone reviewing that video to learn about this. So next slide, I'm going to talk more about this particular workshop just to give you guys an example of the content of our workshop. So the support system members in your support system, they function in a lot of different ways. People can be your role models, and they can help you see what's possible for your life. Could be people that have common interests that you have, like maybe you find someone who's an artist and you love art, and so it keeps you motivated in doing your art together. People who are your close friends who provide nurturing, caring for you. These people maybe can become your plan B when your your childcare falls apart. People who are your helpers that you can depend on in a crisis should be in your support system. People who respect your competence, your coworkers, your boss, people who know that you have skills that maybe they could use. A referral agent, people you can refer to that they can refer you for assistance. For instance, maybe you need housing assistance or a gas voucher, or in our case, we have a lot of customers who have evictions on their record. Who can we refer them to that can help them, clear those evictions and get that cleaned up so we can get them rehoused? And the people who challenge you, they are great people to have in your support system, because they can help you learn and grow and develop your new skills. So that's pretty much, and I know I went pretty fast, but that's pretty much my entire presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions or expand on other workshop topics. I'll turn it back over to the organizers.
Great. Thank you so much, both Deb and Cindy, for these insights, and Cindy for speaking about training your office and staff. So let's see, we have a couple of resources for you today from our speakers. These are resources for any curious listeners who want to continue to learn about these topics. The first is a resource from Harvard University's Center on the Developing Child. This provides several online guides, activities, and resources for service practitioners. The second resource on this list is also from Harvard University, and it's a 5-minute video which provides a theory of change for achieving breakthrough outcomes via building capabilities. The third is the YouTube video referenced by Cindy, which explains the benefits of creating a support system. Our fourth and final resource provides executive functioning training videos, which are developed by Public Consulting Group and can be used in employment counselor trainings. So with that, we're going to open up the conversation for a Q&A session among all of our participants. So if you haven't submitted a question yet, but you would like to, please type it into that question box on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'm going to do my best to address everyone's question in this period of time. So this could be either a question just for Deb, just for Cindy, or for both of them. So I'll give everyone a minute to submit their questions if you haven't already done so. So in the meantime, I have a question for both Deb and Cindy, whoever wants to take it, to start us off. So some of us only see a client a few times, and these meetings may be months apart. Do you have any advice for how to support executive skills development in short-term scenarios?
So this is Cindy. So one of the things that we do with our customers right from the very beginning is create a plan with them. And it's their plan. If possible, we actually have them write out the plan, like what are their goals, short-term, long-term goals, and then what are the steps, and we really focus on baby steps. What are the steps towards making this plan a reality? And then we resurrect that plan during every meeting with the customer. And it's sort of like the grocery list. It really does help people in learning executive function skills. It helps people learning planning skills, future planning, prioritization, you know, all of those types of things by using the plan and bringing it, you know, to the front of the conversation during every consecutive meeting.
And this is Deb. I would just second what Cindy said and say that, you know, building executive skills in adults is a long process, but small changes can be impactful. So things like having clients write down their next steps, using powerful questions to help the clients really learn about themselves, and also that contingency planning step is really important, because for our clients who are coming to us in the OCAT at the beginning of their time on public assistance, they are likely experiencing a lot of trying to juggle a lot of different balls at the same time, and helping them think about a contingency plan can really help if something comes up in between meetings. Just writing down your list of the people who you can call if you need help, the list of people who could potentially watch your kids, the list of people who could potentially give you a ride to work. Those things can really make an impact in helping someone react appropriately when faced with a crisis.
Great, thank you. Let's see, there's one question so far. So have your coaches or support groups implemented brain cognitive game apps? And if so, what apps would you recommend? And Cindy, if you can speak a little bit closer to the microphone. A couple of participants are having issues hearing you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
We have not. Go ahead.
Yes, I was going to say the same. We have not. There are certainly a whole host of brain cognitive apps on iPhones and and other smartphones that can help people keep sharp. The things I would, rather than the kind of brain skill development apps, I might encourage people to think about organizational type apps, or using the smartphone to set reminders to do things, right? A lot of our clients, the digital divide is definitely getting smaller, and a lot of the clients do have smartphones. And so if they need to remember to turn in documentation for something related to their CalWORKs benefits or to their employment plan, teaching them how to use the reminders in their phone native app or a separate app to do those reminders can be really critical, and can help people with organization, or to-do lists on your phone so that it's always with you. Those kinds of things can be really helpful.
And along those lines, what Deb said also, I would just add, we've had some people who are technology challenged, and we provide them with planners, just simple, small notebook planners that they can take with them and write everything down that, they need to remember to, appointments and all those kinds of things.
Great. Thank you so much. Another question is, I have a large caseload, and it is sometimes difficult to stay focused and practice active listening with each client. Do you have any suggestions for removing distractions in the office to remain fully attentive?
So,
Go
ahead, Deb.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Okay. Our staff who are on our SNAP 50/50 program have that very concern. They have very large caseloads. They're busy nonstop all day long. Their people are almost all homeless and in crisis. So there is one thing that they do, and they leave their work area and they meet with their customers in a quiet area, a separate room where they can, shut the door. We make sure it's safe. There's windows, and those types of things. It's still within the facilities. Other staff can, be monitoring, the safety of the staff. But it helps them to remove the distractions and focus just on that customer. I also ask our our staff, to the extent possible, to plan the meeting so that they're planning the meeting. They're spending 35 to 45 minutes, with the customer, and they're leaving them, but they have it scheduled for an hour, and they're leaving themselves, a good 15, 20 minutes to decompress in between customers.
And those are really good. Yeah, those are really good suggestions. I was going to say many of the same things. I think the other important thing is to, again, I know the OCAT is an online tool and you're on your computer, but if you're able to turn your email off during an OCAT, while you're doing an OCAT, so you're not getting those, I don't know about you guys, Outlook pop-ups are, the death of me and I can't look away. Right? They pop up and they grab your attention by design. So turning off your email so you're not getting those messages. Letting the front desk, if you're able, letting the front desk know that you're not available for the next few hours if someone walks in. Not answering your phone if it rings. Putting your personal cell phone away so that you're not seeing those text messages from, your in-laws about Thanksgiving plans, which can be very distracting. I might be experiencing that in my personal life right now. Those kinds of things can help really focus during that time that you're with the client, because your appointment to do an OCAT is their time. And yes, you've got a lot of other things to do. Setting the right amount of time on your calendar is a really important one, but some of those other tips might help too.
Great, thank you. The next question regards just a curiosity about what studies show regarding first-generation immigrants who might be living in generational poverty and associated executive function skills.
That is a great question. A lot of the research around executive skills until very recently, and I mean in the last 5 years, has really been focused around children and maybe into teenager years. And so the research into adult executive skill development and for specific targeted populations is fairly limited. I'm not familiar with any particular studies, but I would say that everything we're talking about is really human behavior, right? It's not an American thing. It's not a California thing. It's not something that's specific to the CalWORK participants. It is really human brain development and human behavior. And so all of the same things would apply to recent immigrants or refugees, but you have to make sure that the context, that you're using in a culturally appropriate context when you're talking about everything really with those clients. And so something like how's your, talking about contingency plans and what's your safety net, different cultures may have different ways of thinking about what that safety net looks like and how they can access that safety net and when it's appropriate to ask for help. So using culturally appropriate language and kind of culturally sensitive case management is going to be really important. But everything we're talking about with regard to executive function relates to all human beings, including everyone on this call, really.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Next question is regarding more of the coaching framework and training. So did you experience any staff resistance in implementing a coaching framework in your office? And if so, how did you approach the situation?
So this is Cindy. So we didn't fully implement the coaching framework here, but what we really emphasize is using the coaching skills and having an understanding of executive function skills and what traumas our customers may have come to us with all the way from childhood to adulthood, and how we can work with our customers to not trigger that trauma was our focus. And we had no resistance from staff. Staff were very excited about learning about these, especially the 2-day training we had from PCG. Staff was very excited about that.
Lovely, thank you.
And this is Deb. I would say, we've trained on the coaching framework in several different states and counties, and I think it's natural that anytime something new is introduced, that people who feel very comfortable in doing their jobs one way may feel some kind of resistance. And there will likely be in every room, in every training, there are champions who are all in and totally excited, and there are other people who are just thinking, I have too many other things to do. How am I going to do this? And so a couple of things that are really important. One is to make sure that you have buy-in at the leadership and supervisory level, so that your supervisors who are directing the day-to-day work of the case managers are bought in and are emphasizing the importance of using those coaching skills, like Cindy said. And also, so that's one thing that's really important to help defray some of the resistance. And the other thing is to demonstrate that coaching skills, active listening, powerful questions, don't necessarily have to take longer than a regular interaction. Coaching is really about building that relationship and making sure that the client is in the driver's seat and setting their own goals, as opposed to dictating what their goals might be. And so if you can demonstrate, which we try to do when we train TANF employment case managers, is demonstrate that coaching interactions don't necessarily have to take more time than the regular interactions you're already having. So you can still get everything done that you need to get done while still shifting your focus to be more person-centered.
Thank you. Let's see. The next question asks, do you have any thoughts about best practices as far as OCAT scheduling times during the day? So I've heard that there may be some benefits to scheduling appointments that are not too early, but not too late either, when their bandwidth may have been taxed.
I think that's a great point. And I think that it's going to be highly dependent on the person and their schedule, right? If someone has a stressful morning in the mornings where they have to get their kids off to school and take 3 buses to get to your office, scheduling an appointment too early in the day or too close to school pickup time when they're going to be eager to finish, both of those could be bad. So I think that it's about it, some people are good in the morning, some people are good in the afternoon. You also, as the case manager, should think about when you are at your best, right? Scheduling an OCAT at 2 p.m. when you've had lunch and you're kind of in that early afternoon sleepy time might not be the best time for you to administer the OCAT. And sometimes we don't know our clients well enough at that stage to know when they're at their best. So instead we can focus on when we are at our best, and that will at least improve one side of the scenario. And I'll just add that I was going to just add that, if you work until 4:30, scheduling an OCAT, which could take more than an hour starting at 3:30, is probably not wise, right? You want to, like Cindy said, you always want to give yourself more time than you need if you're able in your schedule, so that you're not feeling rushed and you're not worried about whether you can get out the door on time to do what you need to do after work.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb. This next question is from Michelle, who asks, is the training that was developed for executive function copyrighted?
You mean the one that's listed on the resource page? I think is the question. And if that,
I would assume so, yes. The thing that,
yeah. So the Utah videos that were mentioned, my company created those for the Utah Department of Workforce Services. They do a very similar executive function training to what Cindy described in Lane County, Oregon. Very, very, very similar for their case managers. And that was developed using federal peer technical assistance funds through TANF. And so it is publicly available. And that link takes you to the 2 videos. So technically the material is copyrighted, but you're able to use them. You couldn't, don't take them and repurpose them as your own, but the videos are available to be used because they were publicly funded and they're available for free at that website.
Great, thank you. This is also, I guess this could be for either you, Deb or Cindy. How spaced apart did you provide workshops to staff? Which workshops do you believe were most beneficial to staff?
So if you're referring to the training that we did for staff, for trauma-informed care, we have ongoing training that we do. Like I mentioned, we just did training. We had Robin Rose here yesterday training us on trauma-informed care. For the staff that Public Consulting Group did, that was a one-time thing where we had them here for 2 days, providing 2 full days of training.
Okay, great. Did you believe that maybe any specific topics were most beneficial or the staff seemed particularly engaged with?
Yeah, I think, understanding the human brain and how it functions was really beneficial to us. Understanding what these skills are, and like Deb mentioned, that these are skills that we all have, and we could have a bad day that triggers us out of control, and understanding what stress does to people's ability to think logically was very beneficial. Mm-hmm. Understanding poverty also, and the stresses that poverty in itself causes, is also very beneficial. In training, there's some really good training out there on poverty itself, like Bridges Out of Poverty training with that's put out by Ruby Payne, is really good training to understand, the impact of poverty on people.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So let's see. I don't believe that we have any more questions, so I think that that means we can round out the end of this webinar. If you wouldn't mind, before you go, we are going to have 2 quick polls, which are going to be evaluating the different topics that we covered today. And we'd really appreciate your feedback with that. So I can put the first one up right now. It's going to be similar to the beginning with a couple of noticeable changes. So it asks to please rate your level of agreement. So this one, the first one is this webinar increased my knowledge about executive function. Let's see, I can close this one. Thank you. And the second one, which is to please rate your level of agreement for the statement that this webinar increased my knowledge around coaching. Give everyone 1 more minute to submit their final answers. Great. So with that, I think we can end our webinar for today. I'd like to extend one more big thank you to both Deb and Cindy for sharing with us not only your time, but your wealth of knowledge that you have surrounding supporting executive function skills and development with clients, with equipping and training staff to forge better supportive relationships, working relationships with their clients. I'd also like to thank everyone on the line today who participated and who listened to this webinar. So for those of you who are interested, I know I have received a couple of questions on this already. We will be publishing this webinar's slides, including an audio recording, the Q&A transcripts, and a little quiz that will test your knowledge about this information. This will all be available on the OCAT Learning Center in probably the second week of December. We're going to post this after that second iteration of this webinar. So again, the Learning Center is on the dashboard once you've logged on into your OCAT account. If you have any issues with finding this or any questions about this webinar, please reach out to the OCAT Help Desk. Thank you so much, everyone, again for attending, and have a good rest of your afternoon.